Wow, Nin. Did I really mean that little to you? That voice was close, tickling my ear, ripping me from my mind. Now, say that again to my face, he murmured, giggling. Talor thar vine zord miren. He leaned closer. Talor zor nilen morai. Talor zor nilen vren talisar. He whispered. Tell me I'm just a fucking statistic. Oh, Nin, darling. Tell me how little and insignificant I am. His voice became a soft moan, a childish, maniacal giggle. That I'm all but a number, a speck in this beautiful, wonderful, starving universe we inhabit. The memory warped into nothing, and I was left strangled by my own scream entangled with my younger self's voice. I had a brother. I couldn't stop another screech clawing for my throat. This time it was agonizing, crying out for him. Jonas. How did I forget my own brother? It's okay. That same voice continued, louder, cutting through the silence, entangling with my sharp pants. His voice was soothing, mimicking water, almost a melody. Everything's going to be okay. Rowan. All of me felt wrong, twisted and contorted, my arms dead weights beside me. But his low murmur was enough to choke the screams at the back of my throat, my screech for a brother I didn't remember. I found my voice, raw and scratchy, spluttering blood. Rowan. I lost myself in sobs. I had a brother, I thought dizzily. I had a brother. Did the moon take him away too? Something snapped inside me. My veins were on fire. When I lunged into a sitting position, I was violently yanked back by Velcro straps pinning me to a table. I could hear my housemate, but I couldn't see him. Rowan, get me out of here. I whispered, my body in fight or flight. I tugged against the restraints, but they were still pinning me down. Rowan was nowhere to be seen, and yet his voice was so close, rooted in my skull. Bolivia House's basement was lit up in candlelight. I could make out blurs of warm orange dancing in the dark. I am. His voice dropped into his usual sour tone. I still couldn't see him, my gaze glued to one particular candle set up on the concrete steps. Jeez, Nin, give me a sec. Rowan, I gritted out, swallowing a cry. Where are you? Footsteps. Slow, like they were dragging themselves. I flinched when ice-cold fingers tiptoed across my forehead. I'm right here, he hummed. I could see his shadow looming over me, his face swamped in darkness. His fingers continued, tiptoeing down my face, my neck, and then to my bound wrists. I pulled at them again, ready to jump up. But I was still pinned down. And then I remembered what state I left Rowan back in. He tried to escape his fate as a king, and his head had been ripped off by Kaz Delacroix, now a brainwashed foot soldier. The cult woman's final words were an order for my housemate to be re-educated. Maggots filled my throat, writhing in the back of my mouth. You got free, I said, pulling at my restraints. His footsteps quickened into some sort of dance, parading around my bed. Sort of. So untie me, I spat. The silhouette paused in its manic dance before I sensed him creep closer. So close, his breath on my face, his lips nibbling my ear. First, I have a question. I had my own. Where are Kaz and Imogen? I demanded. They're not here right now. Rowan answered in a tone that was not him. It was cruel and methodical, and yet kept his snark. So, do you want to start? I managed to sit up, and I felt his cold hands shoving me back down. Start what? I flinched when he got too close again, his hair tickling my cheek. Rowan hung upside down, a shadow with no face. You know what's funny? He murmured, blowing in my face. She showed me everything I wanted to see. My first actual death. It was everything I ever wanted it to be. He laughed, and it wasn't his usual sarcastic chuckle. It was hysteria, like he was mad. I didn't have to see his face to know something had become undone in him, likely influenced by the light inside his head. I could feel him vibrating with excitement, humming with adrenaline. I tried to pull away from him, only for his fingers to wrap around my ponytail, yanking my head back. I had to bite back a shriek when he forcibly turned my head towards a single beam of moonlight scorching my cheek. He chuckled, his lips finding my neck, pressing light kisses that became bites, breaking the skin. He lapped up my blood greedily, his words bleeding into the exact dripping water language I was taught. Zorvren Loren Isle Theory, he murmured, lifting his shadowy head. I still couldn't see his face. I just had one request in return. I caught the glint of silver wrapped around his fingers, following the beam of light that slowly revealed his identity, pulling my housemate from the shadows at last. Or more accurately, a hollowed-out shell bearing his face. The king was finally wearing his crown, drenched in red, ragged strips of clothing hanging from his mostly naked body, jagged bone adorning his curls. This time, the cutting prongs from the child's skull fit him perfectly, drawing beads of thick red that ran down his pallid skin. And somehow it suited him. Because Rowan wasn't human anymore. He wasn't Rowan, either. The moon made it clear, already dipping into my brain. I had to address him in both voice and thought. As king. The king's skin undulated, twitching like it was alive. He had transformed. I could see the old skin shedding, his bones still misshapen and wrong, shuddering under his weight. The transformation into a beast had drained all the color, all of the lingering humanity he had so desperately clung to. It was gone. I could see the madness he'd been brought to, complete unbridled insanity alive in every contortion of his expression, quirking lips and bouncing eyebrows. Whatever had been done to him wasn't like Kaz or Imogen, who underwent simple brainwashing, influencing the mind to think like the cult. No. His energy was darker, hollowing out everything that he was. Whatever had stolen his mind was cruel and unforgiving, and it was evident in his sinister smile, his wide and yet empty eyes. It was more of a mockery of him, a celestial king wearing my housemate's face with moonlit eyes that swallowed his pupils whole. When he tilted his head, his lips curled into a grin revealing elongated teeth jutting from his gums. He leaned close, his breath tickling my lips. Every part of him was her. His face splintered, eyes lit up, bleeding pure, scorching moonlight. She was right there, streaming from his mouth, her own language already filling his head. Veithar viskazor thanir, the king murmured, each word trickling from his tongue, a melody entwining each syllable. I felt his fingertips bleeding her light, dancing across the back of my skull before my body jolted, a raw screech ripping from my lips. I barely sensed the knife go in, protruding through my skull. "Make her fucking suffer," he translated, bursting into childlike giggles, like the moon herself was laughing. The world violently jerked and I was crying, screeching, sobbing for mercy while the moon laughed from the sidelines, illuminating the skylight. Each fractured beam carved a semicircle of light across my face. She was burning me alive, skinning away my flesh. The two of them were playing with me, fucking with me like I was their toy. I felt his fingers follow the intrusion all the way through my splintered skull and straight into the meat of my brain. "Who is Sam Fuller? Nina," the king said, dragging out my name in a mocking drawl. I parted my lips to reply, to scream, to sob for my death, when he blew in my face again. "He liked doing this," he hummed, his lips curving. "I'm so Sven Korin." "Rowan," I managed to hiss out through my teeth. "Please." He inclined his head, and a part of me wondered, why? Why did he let go? "Okay, no, wait. I like playing games. I like playing with you, Nin. Who labeled me an insignificant nothing, a statistic who wouldn't even be missed." He laughed, his voice thundered, enveloped in her, in whatever king's status she had granted him. The candlelight flickered out, and I was left with his shadow bathed in her glow. He leaned in, wiggling his eyebrows. I could still feel his fingers, invasive and wrong, clawing the tangled words from my throat. "Tell me, who is Sam Fuller to you?" His question took me off guard, an answer pouring from my lips. Before I could hit the sound barrier, however, something yanked me back. The king's cruel smile blurred in and out of view. I could feel his fingers moving deeper, this time with purpose. This wasn't torture, I thought dizzily. Rowan, or whatever had taken him over, had an end goal. "Stop playing with her. It's so juvenile." The voice was familiar, a breath of fresh air. "Imogen. Imogen!" I found myself gasping for breath, sobbing her name. I glimpsed her standing in the corner. She was so beautiful, so terrifying. No longer resembling a human, Imogen was half transformed, her body already viciously contorted into a half-human, half-beast. "Immy, get me out of here!" Another shadow loomed over me. Kaz, smiling. His grin was grotesque, entrails caught in his teeth. "You are a fool." The two spoke as one, their laughter bouncing off each other. Kaz burst into laughter, parading around my bed. He began to chant. "Vailrin Morin, Vailrin Morin, Vailrin Morin." Rowan's expression twitched with irritation. "Leave," the king ordered, his voice dropping into a territorial growl. "She's mine." Kaz's eyes darkened, his smile splitting into a grimace. "Ours," he snarled before grabbing Imogen and stalking away. "Soren." With dark eyes, clawed fingernails twitching into a fist, the king watched them trail back up the stairs, cloaks made of human flesh trailing behind them. When the door slammed shut, he turned back to me. "Sam Fuller," he repeated, and I found myself repeating his words in a sharp cry. Sam Fuller. Sam Fuller. "Who is he to you? he sighed, exhaling in my face. I'm soren vel. His voice was a trap, sweet and melodic, but I fell for it. And the language, now that he was prodding on my brain, forcing his way through my memories, started to splinter into clarity, into words that were familiar, that felt like water cupped in my hands. So beautiful, yet agonizing. He's a friend, I managed to cry out, my words ripping through a screech. The king inclined his head, one brow raised. He seemed to enjoy torturing me, dancing around my bed. Okay, but really, he pushed. Who is Sam Fuller? Come on in. Play my game. His lips found my ear once again. Go on. Tell me about your best friend, and maybe I'll think about giving you a reward. He leaned closer, and the more he whispered Sam's name, the more it made sense. His words ignited something in my head, and the ground fell beneath me, leaving me falling. Down, down, down. I fell until I hit light deep in the recesses of my mind. I was standing on Bolivia House's doorstep, warm air grazing my cheeks. In front of me stood a sandy-haired boy with wide eyes, dressed in a leather jacket and jeans. Hey, he said, holding up a hand in a wave. His accent was different. Australian. I'm Kaz's boyfriend, Sam, he added, shifting uncomfortably. I haven't seen him in a while, like since last Friday, and he's not replying to my texts. He's fine, I said, smiling widely. Behind me, Charlie Delacroix, also Kaz, was extremely close to toppling off of the chair he was strapped to, Rowan and Imogen muffling under duct tape gags. Sam! Kaz was muffled, screaming. Sam! Get fucking help! Until this boy showed up, Kaz did everything I told him, nodding along and not acting like a child like the other two. He even listened to me try and give my reasons for doing this. He was part of something beautiful, magical, and his sacrifice would paint the world in light. I thought he understood. I thought he believed me. Until his boyfriend showed up, and his expression turned feral, desperate. I had to gag him to stop the boy crying out. In the corner of my eye, Kaz was rocking back and forth on his chair, muffled screaming. I made sure to block the gap in the door. He's sick, I said. It's like super contagious, so you should probably leave. Sam didn't look convinced, and I half wondered if another sacrifice would suffice. I was so close to saving myself and Jonas. Just a few more days. Right. Sam cocked his head, his lips curling in distaste. I'm sorry. Who are you again? Help! Rowan's muffled croak was unexpected, my skin prickling. I thought I'd gagged him well enough. Sam! Rowan cried out, his voice stronger, and something in me snapped. Sam, you need to get fucking help. Now! Sam's expression crumpled and he bound forwards. Rowan? Sam stumbled forwards, and in my panic I shoved him back. What's going on? She's going to fucking kill us! I had zero choice. Holding my breath, I politely told them to wait. I closed the door, twisted around, grabbed my gun, untied Rowan, and dragged him to the door, not before grabbing a jacket and throwing it over his shoulders to hide the markings I had sculpted into his flesh. Luhar, Nathur, and Velilua ran down his right arm, while Lunacar Velix was clumsily cut into his palm. Finally, the seal across his heart. I found a pair of gloves and, ignoring his raised eyebrow, forced them onto his hands. I made sure to stick the revolver in his back, sliding it down the curve of his spine. I felt his shiver, muffling his shriek with my hand. Talk to Sam, I murmured in his ear, forcing him to turn around by the scruff of his shirt, gesturing to Kaz and Imogen. If you say anything, I will fucking kill them. But you won't. He muffled into my hand, meeting my gaze, his eyes challenging. He was right. I wasn't going to shoot them. So I ran the barrel of the gun under his jacket, all the way up the flesh of his back, and into the back of his neck. Jonas's survival pushed me to go one step further, teasing the trigger. This time Rowan flinched, his expression hardening. I repeated my words, emphasizing each one with a sharp prod. Talk to Sam. When he didn't respond, panting into my palm, I dug the gun deeper. Nod if you understand. Rowan straightened up, brushing away my hand with a snort. Aye, aye, Captain, he breathed before opening the door, fashioning a grin. I watched him, maybe with awe, my own heart aching. I wasn't expecting to fall in love with the vessels who were going to save my brother. Rowan was a natural, casually leaning against the doorframe with his signature smile. Hey, sup, Sammy? What a great evening we're having. Sam shot me a look before focusing on Rowan. Dude, what the fuck are you wearing? Sam's words were directed at Rowan's jacket slung over his bare torso. Rowan didn't seem to notice himself, offering a shrug. What can I say? We may or may not be playing Naked Cluedo right now. So you're kind of here at the wrong time. He turned to me. Or maybe right time? Well, if it was the wrong time, we would definitely ask you to join in our game of Naked Cluedo. You said you needed help, Sam said. Rowan, are you fucking on something? Yes, Rowan winked. Life. Sam stepped back. Okay, look, if you're in trouble, I can help you. I caught the curl in Rowan's lips like he was going to cry out again. But he didn't. Rowan rolled his eyes and his laugh was real and natural. He even nudged me like I was part of them, like I was in their family. I was fucking with you, Sammy. We're all kinda drunk right now, so don't take anything we say seriously, all right? He winked again. Naked Cluedo is getting spicy, so we shall bid you adieu. He was a good actor. Part of me hated what I had become. In my desperation to find vessels for our mother, I hadn't expected to grow close to the Bolivia House residents. I had spent the better half of my late teenage years trapped in a cult, and for the first time in so long, I knew what family dinners tasted like. Veggie lasagna, spaghetti, casserole, burned apple pie, when Rowan tried cooking. I knew what board game nights looked like, arguments over cereal, movie nights, and laughter. I knew the warmth of a bed, the boiling heat of a shower, and the comfort of people who cared about one another. I finally knew what it was like to have a family. It was easy to insert myself into their dynamic, initially. But I didn't realize just who I was fucking with. From my notes, I only knew minimal information about the Bolivia House residents. They were students, early 20s, and out-of-towners. Which made them perfect sacrifices. I played the role of a student applying for a room, and I was in almost instantly. First impressions, these kids were weird, but lovable. Imogen was naively sweet, immediately opening up to me since I was the only other female housemate. She told me her entire life story, including her abandonment as a child. I should have used that against her, but I opened up about my own childhood. Obviously not about being kidnapped by a moon-worshipping cult. Imogen was like the sister I never had. Kaz like a big brother, who I could talk to about everything and not feel embarrassed or awkward. He was the mom of the house. I mentioned in passing that I liked apples. The next day, I walked into the kitchen to find him with a grocery bag full of fruit. He didn't open up much, only when he was high. But when he did, it was the most out-of-pocket shit I had ever heard. Charlie Delacroix came from a well-known family in his hometown, and according to Kaz himself, winking at me, the family business wasn't exactly legal. However, due to Kaz's parents' refusal to accept his relationships, he wasn't a fan of them, only visiting them on holidays. Sacrificing the son of an infamous crime family wouldn't be ideal. But Charlie, like his housemates, really was the perfect candidate. Finally, the housemate I found myself unable to keep away from. Rowan Beck had a problem with me the second we met, and I wondered if he was suspicious. But no. I caught his glare when I was laughing with Kaz. He was scared I was stealing his roommates, which was adorable. Initially, he only communicated with rolled eyes and sly glances he thought I wasn't noticing. But the more we were alone together, I understood why the other two seemed smitten with him. He was funny. Not intentionally funny, of course. His pretentious attitude and chronic clumsiness, walking into everything, made him a clown. But he was kind. He was sweet. I found myself laughing for the first time in so long, and a part of me already knew. From the second I met Rowan, I was going to fall for him. I knew, in another faraway universe, I fell in love with this dumbass. He was the tiniest glimmer of sunlight in this painful facade of life I'd built. Even if that ray of sunshine was a pretentious know-it-all I wanted to push into a ravine. And I did fall for him. Annoyingly. It was only when Jonas called me, screaming that he was being put forth on the altar at the next full moon, that I felt myself snap altogether, coming apart completely. But I couldn't deny the feelings I had for the boy whose heart I was supposed to carve out. I did things I regretted but knew were necessary. I seduced Rowan Beck, leading him into my bed and drugging him before tying him to the others in the lounge. He trusted me with his thoughts, all of our intimate moments. The morning after, I dragged him from my bed, threatening him with a gun I promised myself I would only use in an emergency. Whatever fairy tale I'd built with these strangers was over, I told myself. I followed my brother's instructions, imprisoning the Bolivia House residents, readying them for sacrifice. I sliced her words into his skin. I told him the language I had carved into his arms was beautiful, and I promised he would fall for her too. I prodded each symbol, still bleeding, sharp beads of red running down his skin. His blood was her life force. His body, her canvas. I told him that, drawing constellations inside the pooling scarlet, just like Mom taught me. But he just lurched back like he was scared of me, violently straining against the ropes tangled around his wrists. It was pathetic. He was pathetic for actually falling for my ploy. And I was pathetic for falling. Harder. But watching Rowan wear a mask so effortlessly, smiling through the agony I'd carved over his heart, my heart mourned for what could have been. Sam was quickly becoming a liability. He didn't believe Rowan's lies. Okay. He folded his arms. So, how about I talk to Kaz? He's sick. Rowan pretended to cough. COVID. Rowan had gone from a Golden Globe performance to a children's actor. No. I caught his side eye. This was calculating. This was fucking clever. His bad acting was on purpose. He doesn't want to talk to you. I spoke up, stabbing my gun harder into Rowan's back. I heard the breath leave his lungs in a sharp gasp. He sent me a look, but I was still speaking, the words dripping from my mouth like puke. I was glad I'd gone through their phones, highlighting texts from loved ones. Sam and Kaz hadn't spoken in a week. and the last text Charlie Delacroix had sent was, "Fuck off, Sam." "He never wants to see you again," I said. "Get lost." I slammed the door on his face before he could reply. "Harsh," Rowan muttered, when I forced him onto his chair, tying his wrists together. Kaz muffled something and I ripped off his tape. "What did you say to him?" he demanded in a hiss. "I told him you never want to see him again." I had to swallow the growing lump in my throat. Kaz ducked his head and I refused to admit he was crying. I looked away before I could choke on my tongue to try and apologize. "You're an evil bitch," Imogen whimpered as I replaced her gag with fresh tape. "But it's true," I said, stealing my voice and avoiding Rowan's glare. I bent in front of Rowan, tearing off a fresh strip of tape and pressing it promptly over his mouth. "So you are in a cult," he muffled. "Well, what do you know? I was right." Kaz was losing his patience with Rowan very slowly. "Rowan, listen to me very carefully," he grumbled. "We have known she's a cultist since she brought us down here and tied us up." I could hear his saliva bouncing off the tape with every spit. "Shut the fuck up. You can't argue with crazy, and she's nuts." I ignored him. "When I offer you to the moon, you won't be coming back, so I did you a favor and told your boyfriend not to bother." "How generous," Kaz muttered, mocking my voice. Loosening their restraints, I stroked my fingers over the words I had carved into Imogen's neck, Kaz's shoulder, and Rowan's right arm. "I promise you," I said, forcing a grin. I ran my hand over the words I'd sliced into Rowan's bare chest. "Alex. For Jonas." "It won't hurt." I ran my fingers through Rowan's hair, willing myself to believe my own words. He didn't move, paralyzed, gasping through the duct tape gag. "I'll make sure it doesn't hurt. I'll make it quick." "You don't have to do this," Rowan whispered when I tightened his ropes. "If you're in trouble, if some psycho is making you do this, we can help you." His voice broke into a sob. "We're your friends," he whispered. "Remember that." I shook off his words, holding my tongue. "Well, I'm excited," I said, forcing a wide grin. Kneeling in front of him, I cradled his cheeks and wiped away his tears. "I can't wait for you to be our king." I nodded to Kaz and Imogen. "And of course, a court can't be complete without a queen and a trickster." When neither of them responded, Imogen bursting into sobs, I held up Kaz's phone with a forced smile. "Now, you need to eat in order for your bodies and hearts to be healthy." "For Jonas," I kept telling myself, willing my hands to stop shaking. "Who wants pizza?"